We're back. Yes, we are. Rob Ellis, Bill Colarulo. We're Sports Take, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network. Please hit that like button if you could. Friends. All right. So let's talk some Cowboys here, Bill. Their losses. They lost at Arizona. They lost at San Francisco where they got smashed. They lost to the Eagles by 5 back in week 9. Okay. So they're the 3 losses. All 3 have occurred on the road. They've won all their home games. They're 9-3. They've won 4 straight. They've won 14 straight at home. But as we talked about a little bit earlier, they have not beaten a team with a winning record. They beat Seattle last week, which then pushed Seattle to a 500 team. Seattle 6-6 on the season. So in terms of, I don't know what you would call quality wins. I don't know how you're going to quantify it, but quality wins, I guess you would go with Seattle for sure. Rams, who are, kind of in the same category as Seattle. Okay. Chargers are under 500. Giants are under 500, who they've beaten twice. The Jets are under 500. Washington's under 500. Carolina's under 500, etc. You get it. They've been very good at beating the bad, but they haven't had a ton of tests, and they have a couple of tests here to close out the season for sure, starting with the Eagles on Sunday.
Yeah, I think if you're the Dallas Cowboys, probably the best you played against a good opponent would have been in Philadelphia, even though you lost the game. The offense played really well in that football game, put up a lot of yards, a lot of points, and they didn't really – not a lot of points. That's the one area they didn't do well, was not putting up enough points, but a lot of yards. And the defense didn't play that badly when you look at the final statistics, but it was one of those games where the Eagles figured out a way to win. You could say the Cowboys outplayed the Eagles in that football game, but the Eagles figured out a way to win, and that's what they've been able to do up until Sunday against the 49ers. But, yeah, I have not been impressed by the opponents at all that the Dallas Cowboys have beaten, but they do look good. I mean, it's hard to deny that when you watch them, they do look good. And, I mean, one of these stats that blew my mind today was at home this year, they are a plus 151 point differential. And I know you would say, hey, well, look who they've played. But that is the highest point differential the Dallas Cowboys have had at home since 1966.
Oh, my God.
And you talk about some of these Cowboys offenses over the years with Michael Irvin and Emmitt Smith and Troy Aikman. No, this is the highest point differential they've had at home through 6 games since 1966. So I don't care who they're playing. Offense puts up a lot of points at home.
I mean, they're a plus 168 on the season. The only team that's even really in the vicinity is the Niners, who are plus 163. To put it in perspective, the Eagles are at plus 41 compared to plus 168 for the Cowboys. Now, the Eagles have certainly played a much more difficult schedule. There's no denying that, but it just tells you how well. But see, I think I'm leaning, Bill, more towards I know they haven't beaten any real quality opponents, but I think they're really good. I do. I think they're really good. I don't think you're this complete across the board if you're not. Like, offensively, they're first in scoring at 32.3 points per game. They're 11th in rushing, 117 per game. They're third in passing, 263.4. Defensively, they're fourth in points allowed at 18.3. They're fifth against the pass. They're just consistent. Are they great against the run? They're 11th. I mean, this top half of the league. It might be an area that you could attack if you choose to, if you're the Eagles. But Prescott is putting up monster numbers. The thing that's impressive about him, it's not so much even the 3,200 yards. It's the 26-6 touchdown interception ratio. And it's also completing 70% of his passes and a 108.3 passer rating. Like, the one thing that had always been an issue with him when he got himself in trouble was the turnovers. And it was last year. He hasn't done that this year. That's been cleaned up. He's improved that part of his game. So, and as you mentioned, career-wise, always very good against the Eagles. Always. And especially there. Eagles haven't won there since 17.
They haven't won 2 games in a season against them, sweeping them since 2011. So it's not easy to win both games against the Cowboys. That's why when we get the schedule every year and we do that kind of stupid exercise where we go through win, loss, that everybody does that means nothing. You never usually say they're beating the Cowboys twice. We always say, they're going to split with the Cowboys because it hasn't happened in 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
But what's crazier when I looked at all these numbers and all these statistics is we talked a little bit about for the 49ers game, hey, the Eagles have to get out to an early lead. Well, you look at this Cowboys team at home, they had not trailed for a single second at AT&T Stadium until that Seattle game.
Oh, my God.
It's been amazing. And you look at it, they've been leading for 234 minutes at home. They've had the lead. They've been tied for 51 minutes, and they've only trailed 28 minutes, and it was in that Seattle game. It's amazing how dominant they've been, and they've gotten out to early leads quickly. So not only for the fact that it's the Cowboys, I do think for the Eagles' psyche as well, after coming off of a game like they just had against San Francisco, it'd be great to see them get out to an early lead. I know they don't take the ball if they win the toss. I agree with that mindset. But it'd be great if they don't get the ball. Hey, a quick 3-and-out for Dallas. Let's put up a touchdown, not a field goal, a touchdown, and take an early lead, because I think that can really change not only their psyche, but you've seen Dallas isn't used to playing from behind.
And two other things to watch for. I mean, CeeDee Lamb comes in this thing. He's already got 90 receptions, Bill, for more than 1,100 yards, almost 1,200 yards, 7 touchdowns, 13.1 per catch. And the guy who's really developed and really turned into, a go-to piece for Dak, and you've really seen him sort of emerge here, is the young tight end, Jake Ferguson. His numbers aren't going to stun you when you look at them. He's got 46 catches for 498, but he's got 5 touchdowns, which is tied with Brandon Cooks for the second most receiving touchdowns. He's really blossomed into a guy, and Cooks is getting better as the weeks go on here, and becoming more incorporated into their offense as the weeks go on.
And not sure you knew this, Rob, but the Eagles don't do very well against tight ends. So that's been a problem.
I haven't heard that.
Yeah, and you look at the game in week 9, Ferguson, 7 catches, 91 yards, and he's now played 3 games in his career against this Philadelphia Eagles team. And in 3 games, he has 12 catches, 155 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And he didn't have any touchdowns in week 9, but had a good game, 7 for 91. It's going to be an issue. And look, CeeDee Lamb, he's going to get his yards. He's just that good. He's going to get open. But I would love to see Sean Desai have a game plan where it's, hey, we're going to make someone else beat us. They do have other weapons. They do. But don't let it be CeeDee Lamb. He had 11 catches for 191 yards in week 9 when we all said going into the game, be careful for CeeDee Lamb, and you let him put off almost 200 yards. So I'm hoping they have a better game plan this week.
And they haven't run the ball great. They've been okay. Pollard's been solid, but not going to knock your socks off necessarily. He's got 737 rushing yards, which is, again, pretty good. 4.1 yards per carry, and he's found the end zone 5 times on the ground, but he's averaging 61 yards per game. He's been okay. I mean, to me, that should be a running offense that doesn't run all over you. This should be a week where the Eagles don't get gutted on the ground like they have the last 3 games. So if that becomes the case, make Dallas one-dimensional. And this is where your defensive line has to come in there and make plays and force them into mistakes, force Dak into mistakes. He did it. Even though they lost that game last year, Dak threw one. I remember it was a pick 6 by Sweat in that game, relatively early. And I actually thought what's funny about that game, I thought the Eagles played, I think it was Christmas Eve. I think it was the game.
It definitely was Christmas Eve because it messed up our 7 fishes on Christmas Eve. I got the big Italian family, and instead we're all huddled around watching the Eagles blow that lead they had against the Cowboys.
Yeah, you thought it was messed up last year. Wait do we get to Christmas this year, my friend? Because they're playing on Christmas. Yes. But I thought they actually played okay. It was really a game where I think Quez Watkins killed him. There were 3 plays that he could have made on a ball, either breaking it up or catching it, and turned into interceptions, and they lost. So my point is, the Eagles played him pretty tough last year. I know the Eagles were operating at a higher capacity last year than they are this year, but I mean, you look at they've torn the Giants apart. Not that that's saying much, but they beat the Giants 89-17. If you exclude the Eagles, they've outscored the NFC East this year 134-27. So they're good at beating up on the bad teams.
Yeah, and I think this says more about their opponents than it does about the Cowboys. You look at the last 4 weeks, they were close to double-digit favorites in every game. Even the Seattle game, I think they were a 9-point favorite at kickoff. They were a double-digit favorite against the Commanders, double-digit favorite against the Panthers, double-digit favorite against the Giants. And like I said, less about the Cowboys, more about the opponents. So we'll see. They're going to have to do it against a good team this week, something they haven't been able to do yet. But you talked about the running game for Dallas. I was surprised how much they missed Ezekiel Elliott this year because you saw his yards per carry really dip off last season. I think he averaged under 4 yards a carry last year, but simply having that power back on the inside allowed Tony Pollard, when he would come in as that change of pace back, to really be able to pick up some chunk yardage. And now without Zeke, it's just not working as much as what we saw last season. And that offensive line, outside of Tyron Smith, isn't that great on the edges. I mean, obviously, you got Zach Martin, who's one of the best, and even their other guard, Tyler Smith, their other guard's pretty good. But their right tackle, Steele, not a very good pass blocker, in my opinion. So I think you saw that in the first game. Eagles were able to get 5 sacks. So this is a week where hopefully they can generate pressure. And their center's not that great. So you talk about Jalen Carter and Milton Williams and Jordan Davis and Fletcher Cox getting interior pressure. But there was another stat, and I'll pull it up later, but Dak Prescott's very good when you allow him to get out of the pocket and make plays.
He's good off schedule. He is.
Very good. And one of the greatest things that the 49ers did against Jalen Hurts, and you heard Nick Bosa talk about it after the game, they didn't even care about making the sack. They just wanted to make sure they kept Jalen Hurts in the pocket, didn't let him get those schoolyard plays where he breaks out of the pocket and makes a play down the field. Josh Sweat, Hassan Reddick, and whoever else is in, Nolan Smith, Brandon Graham, need to be disciplined this week. They cannot get sucked inside and allow Dak Prescott to get outside the pocket. So if they can maintain their lane and let your D tackles, Milton Williams and Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis, get that interior pressure, I think that could go a long way to forcing Dak to make mistakes. But the moment you see Reddick or Sweat crash inside and Dak gets outside of them, we're in trouble.
Yeah, the other thing too, like, I know they played a decent amount of snaps, and they probably hit some form of a rookie wall. But man, I need Carter and Davis to push through it. Like, this can't be trending wrong with them. That is such a critical area for them, And Fletcher's older. He's played a lot of snaps. The young guys need to come through. But can I just quick reminder in the chat? Not going to tolerate the language, the all the other stuff that's going on that we talked about before. Like, just stop with the nonsense in the chat. You will be extracted from the chat if you don't.
It's getting heated. I didn't even notice.
It's not heated, and it's not a knock on us. It's people kind of going back and forth, but like some of the stuff is just ridiculous and over the top. So anyway, but those two need to push through, man.
And Rob, speaking of the chat, I don't know if you noticed, our man Twiz, rocking the San Francisco logo on his profile.
Yeah, he lose a bet.
That's what I asked him on the Power Hour. I said, Twiz, what's going on, man? You didn't convert, did you? He lost a bet, and he's got another one going this week where you may see a Cowboy star if the Eagles lose. So, Twiz, stop making bets, man.
Yeah, Quiz, stop, man. We don't need it, dude. Twiz, we don't need it. Like, stop. Yeah, get out of this. We don't need to see that logo. We've seen enough of that logo this week. Well, the other one is they've generally, Bill, and tell me if you disagree, done a pretty decent job against Micah Parsons. Generally.
They have, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we know what kind of issues this guy can provide, bring to the table. If you look at it, he's got 11.5 sacks. He's got 42 tackles. He's got 13 tackles for losses, 2 pass defense, forced fumble, and a fumble recovery. Like, we know what he can bring and what he's capable of. But much like Nick Bosa, different players, but much like Nick Bosa, they generally seem to have a pretty good plan and do a decent job. I'm not trying to jinx anything here. The next thing you know, he'll be going bananas and having 5 sacks, but they've done a pretty good job against him.
Yeah, I'm looking at some of his numbers. So it didn't feel like it, but he did have a sack and a half against them in week 9. But I thought they actually did a nice job shutting him down. But he did have a sack and a half. Looks like on Christmas Eve last year, 0 sacks.
Yep.
0 sacks in the first game last season. So, yeah, they have done a nice job. He didn't play in the Week 17 matchup of 2021, and then I'm just looking
You can
what
throw
he did.
some of those games out, those late games.
Yeah,
generally.
and then a half sack in his rookie year. So, yeah, but it does feel I didn't even realize he had a sack and a half because it didn't feel like he made a big difference in that game against the Philadelphia Eagles. But Eagles offensive line, we just saw it. They did it against Bosa, like you said. I mean, they do a good job against really good pass rushers. We saw the same thing against the Rams, Aaron Donald. When they have a good defensive lineman, whether it's an edge or a D tackle, Jeff Stoutland and that offensive line are good enough where they scheme something up where they're not going to really wreck a game. And like you said, knock on wood, it doesn't happen this week. But I'm not as worried about Micah Parsons this week. And I do think you'll see the Eagles, as good as the Cowboys defense can be, I do think we'll see the Eagles put up points.
Yeah,
the issue is just going to be on the other side of the ball. Can they figure out how to shut down Dak and CeeDee Lamb? That's the big question.
I don't see 2 weeks where this offense does not play well. I mean, they didn't play well last week. And I got a chance yesterday to watch the All-22. I don't know, if you did as well, Bill. But one of the takeaways I had from it was I thought the Eagles' O-line pass protection was good. I don't think they blocked it up well. There weren't a lot of opportunities, too, in fairness to them. But I didn't think they did a good job in the run game. I really don't. But I'm encouraged by what I saw, believe it or not, from pass protection. My initial thought watching it was Jalen didn't have as much time. I actually think Jalen did have a decent amount of time. I know his numbers are okay. I don't think Jalen played well. I do not think Jalen played well.
He did not. It was not one of Jalen Hurts' best games. And he did. He had an eternity back there at times. It wasn't on the offensive line, pass blocking. They didn't do a good job run blocking, but they also didn't get a lot of opportunities either. I mean, that's the problem. And it was frustrating hearing Brian Johnson talk at his press conference because it's something that we all say where Brian Johnson acknowledged, hey, sometimes you're not averaging a lot of yards per carry, and then you get that one long 30-yard run, and now it changes everything. Yeah, that's what we've been saying.
Right.
Stick to the damn run because you have a guy like DeAndre Swift who has the capability of hitting a home run every time he touches the ball. So if you give him 15 carries, maybe he gets stopped on 10 or 12 of them. But you know what? Those 3 big carries he gets of 30 yards, it's going to be a game changer.
Total difference. Yeah, I mean, think about it. You had, whether it was Jalen I know he got a tush-push touchdown, but I'm talking about Jalen, getting out and getting loose a couple of times. You didn't have that. You really had no rushing attack whatsoever. You were a very one-dimensional team in a lot of ways in that game. Here's some positives here from Jeff McClain. I think we kind of knew this part of it, but Dallas Goedert is expected to play Sunday from what he's hearing. Also, it looks like Zach Cunningham with that hamstring should be ready for Sunday as well. Man, that's really good news there. I mean, you get Cunningham back and then you add some depth with Shaq Leonard. That's big.
That is really big news. Yeah, you said earlier that Zach wasn't playing this week. I thought maybe that had come out, but that's great if Cunningham can play. I always get nervous with the hamstring, though, because we've seen guys come back from it, and then they play a couple of snaps, and then you see them come up lame. So let's hope that he's fully healthy, because with that hamstring, it's not something you want to mess around with. But, man, I wouldn't mind seeing Cunningham and Leonard as your linebackers behind our defensive line, and the secondary now is healthy. So now it's time for these guys to start playing. There's no more excuses. So we will see. And real quick, jumping back to Jalen Hurts, he had on average in the San Francisco 49ers game, 3.85 seconds was his average time to throw. That is a long time in the NFL. So wasn't the offensive line, wasn't Jalen Hurts' best game. Give credit to the 49ers. They did a great job. Their defensive scheme was really good. Because I loved what they did on the D-line, saying, hey, we don't even care about getting the sack. We're just going to maintain our lanes, contain Hurts in the pocket, play a zone defense, and try to take some things away. But, hey, it's very rare Jalen Hurts has 2 bad games in a row. And final stats, it's hard to say he had a bad game, but it wasn't his best game.
Yeah, numbers, that's where numbers, I think, can be misleading a little bit. Like, he did not play that well. And, I agree. I agree. Like to have that kind of, if you're an offensive lineman and you look at those stats, you're like, we did our job in pass protection. Like we can't do much better than that. There were a couple opportunities that I saw where he didn't throw one to Stoll. There was another one, I think it was Calcaterra. And then I'm trying to remember what the other one was. It might've been Zacchaeus. He had a couple of those guys open. I don't know that there isn't a massive, I think there's a little bit of trust level with those guys. I think the danger of having such good receivers in A.J. Brown and Devontae is it's almost like you don't trust anybody else. And that's one of the things I think that he needs to be a little bit more willing, at least if those guys are in the game, if they're open, pull the trigger. And he hasn't been doing that lately.
And I hate even bringing this up. I said it on the Power Hour before this show that I hate giving this guy any airtime with the ridiculous comments, but we're talking about Jalen Hurts. Did you see David Carr on the NFL
I was going to
Network?
get to that, but let's do it now. We might as well do it now.
Mean, I was losing my mind this morning on the Power Hour, basically saying this is what pisses me off. When guys say things simply for clickbait and simply to have that quote-unquote hot take. David Carr is a guy who's given a platform, a really big platform on the NFL Network, and you sound like an absolute moron when you say the Philadelphia Eagles would be better off benching Jalen Hurts for Marcus Mariota.
Yeah, it's so so the way he started it off, it made me think he was going down the road of, hey, I don't think he's healthy. Shut him down, get him healthy. Like he did kind of dance around that, but then he goes into these areas like, Mariota is the best option right now. If Jalen were crawling, I'd want Jalen out there rather than Marcus Mariota. And it tells me a couple of things. He didn't watch him play at all in the preseason when Mariota stunk out loud, like to the point where you're like, oh my God, is he going to make the team? It was that bad. He's also underachieved his entire career, be it in Tennessee or be it with the Raiders. And you'd think he'd know that by watching his brother with the Raiders all those years. But he looks to me, again, if you're just begging for clicks and viral reaction and guys like us talking about it, kudos, David Carr, you won because we're doing it. But if that's really what you think, I question every word that comes out of that guy's mouth from here on because he has no idea what he's talking about. None.
It's upsetting because it's not just us talking about it. It's everywhere now today. David Carr said this, David Carr said that. And, it's very frustrating. But it's similar to when I talked about it on my show this morning, people in the chat were saying, oh, it's like Chris Sims last year saying things about Jalen Hurts and then continuing to stick with it. But you're right. Clearly, David Carr is just not watching the game because I would tell you, if Jalen Hurts did need to go down for an extended period of time, knock on wood, that doesn't happen.
Right.
Eagles may be better off with Tanner McKee than they are with Marcus Mariota.
Here's the other thing that's a tell for people. When they put something out there like that and then spend about 2 to 3 hours defending the stance the way that they did with everybody on social media. And I was on the air last night as it went down. I was on WIP last night as it went down. And now I'm monitoring as I'm doing the show, David Carr's interaction, right? And it just screamed of, I know I just said something stupid, but let me just double down on it with everybody. And that's what he did. I mean, he essentially for hours doubled down on it. And he got hammered from all fronts. It wasn't just fan reaction or Philly reaction to it. It was other analysts like, dude, are you serious? Like, you can't be real with this. And the other thing is, the other part of where I think there's just fault in the whole thought is, I'm not telling you he's 100%, but he looks way better now, mobility-wise, than he did 4 or 5 weeks ago. And I thought he actually looked good in the Bills game, and they called some, design runs for him.
Yeah, his first scramble in that Buffalo Bills game, I turned to Mark Farzetta. We were watching the game down at the Ocean Casino for the game day shows here on JAKIB. And I said, man, that's the best Jalen's looked all season. He looked spry. He looked quick. And you saw it again in the Niners game. He looks like he's able to move. The issue in the Niners game wasn't because Jalen was hurt. He just didn't have a good game. He didn't do a good job of reading the zone defenses that they were throwing at him. So, yeah, it's less – I'm getting angry at David Carr because I'm saying he's just saying things to get clickbait. It actually may be worse than that. He may just have not knowing what the hell he was talking about.
Right.
I mean, that may be what makes it even worse because you're given this platform and you're not prepared.
I know. Yeah, I honestly don't know what's worse. Are you just trying to be that guy to get did you have a discussion with a producer who said, "Hey, listen, your analysis is fine. We need you to say something crazy," because these discussions happen. Trust me. Or if you really thought that, like if your football brain is telling you that, I say that's probably worse. Like you're a sellout if it's the former, but you have no idea what you're looking at if it's the latter. And you're David Carr.
Well, he says, and then I do want to get away from this because it's pissing me off, but he says Jalen isn't comfortable reading through a defense in a drop back pass scenario. Some would say he's not even good at it. It's like, dude, did you watch the Super Bowl?
Yeah.
Jalen put up historic numbers throwing the football in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I again, right. To even like to go that he can't read defenses, he can't handle himself from the pocket. It was all the stuff that was sort of thrown out there when he was coming out of college, which he's proven. He's dispelled all those myths. He really has. It's lazy on top of everything else. It's a lazy take.
Michael Robinson, who was on with him, former Seattle Seahawks player, immediately was like, Philly, I didn't say this, Philly. I didn't say this, because he realized, like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah. I wish and again, I didn't watch the cut beyond after he said, they'd be better off with Mariota, whatever. I hope somebody jumped him on that panel. I hope somebody had the guts to really jump him instead of just letting it go. Like I saw Michael Robinson was kind of playing the like, whoa, routine, but I wish somebody should have really pushed back at him on it. I don't know that happened.
And no surprise here, but Mike Florio, who Sims works with, his article about it was, well, Carr's point does carry a plausible nuance. Like, come on, dude. There's nothing plausible about that freaking point, Mike Florio.
I know. Yeah, I know. It's ridiculous. All right, we're going to come back, and we will get a little bit into the offense and what they can maybe do to put Jalen in a better spot to succeed, namely, some of the running issues that they've had of late, getting Swift a little bit more involved. But, yeah, I think there are, with everything that we just said, it's not that Jalen shouldn't be called on the carpet for certain things. He's got to be better too. Like he does. So we'll get into all of that when we come back. Don't go anywhere. That's Bill Colorillo. I'm Rob Ellis. We are Sports Take, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network. Jim Murray and Principal Financial Group are the people that you should trust with your finances, with your hard-earned money. They have done an unbelievable job, not only for me, but all their clients. But I can tell you from a personal experience that I had a hard time finding the right person to invest with. And Jim is absolutely spectacular, whether it's retirement planning, 401k review, insurance review. You have a small business, you're trying to get your employee benefits off the ground. He's on top of everything. And he's always looking with one eye forward here to put you in the best position to succeed, and whether it's, for you, any of those issues. But I know personally, I've entrusted my IRA, my 401k rollover with Jim, and I couldn't be any happier. You will be too. Give him a call, 610-996-4751, 610-996-4751. You could also email him, Murray, MURRAY, .jim@principal.com. That's Murray.jim@principal.com.